Hello, and welcome to another Sports Next Door podcast. My name is Owen. Today is Thursday, April 29th, and I'm joined, as I always am, by my neighbor Max. How's it going, my friend?
Pretty well. Resting up after calling it a week of work sounds a bit of hyperbole because it was only 3 days. But first run at the gauntlet, and my legs are in recovery mode. So I've been resting them up easy today after being forced to put them through a bit of unexpected labor yesterday, helping a friend move. And not too much going on. Still acclimating to the new city, moving Saturday. So just kind of still in that transition phase. Haven't quite settled in yet. How are you doing?
Doing well. It's been an interesting week of studying at home. Obviously, I was telling you before the pod started, my knee has been really wild this week and all swollen, and so I couldn't really move around, which is probably best studying for my final university exam today, which is out of the way. So I am officially moving on out of the academic life and into the boring world of work. And besides that, Leafs 4-game win streak. The NFL draft is tonight. TFC picked up a great player that I want to talk about, and lots of great stuff going on in the sports world that's kept me busy, and can't really complain. Just hanging in there.
Sweet. Well, I don't have any crazy other news out of the world to prologue that. So let's jump right in.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I would say 3 weeks from now, we are, or at least here in Ontario, we're going to be eligible to book vaccine appointments. So
It's
even though
2 weeks for me here in Quebec.
Okay, there you go. So one of these days, I don't know when it will be, but eventually we will have an in-person podcast, and it could be many months from now, but it might happen at some point. And that was the original plan. Obviously, COVID threw everything out the window, but hey, it's something to look forward to. And this is a checkpoint towards that.
We'll get there when we get there. In other great Quebec news, curfew's getting pushed from 8 p.m. to 9:30, which is, it sounds strange to celebrate a 9:30 curfew, but I'm so excited.
Yeah, and hopefully you guys will have patios opening up soon so you can watch Leafs Habs in the first round playoffs in Montreal.
Yeah, I did not bring my Leaf jersey, partly out of space concern and also out of personal safety concern. So maybe I can blend in with the Habs, although I doubt I can hide the cheering.
Yes, absolutely. And that is where we will begin the podcast today with some hockey talk. We'll also have some combat corner, some baseball and some basketball, and finish up with some football. And by that point, it is 7 p.m. Eastern time. We might have some of the first returns on picks in the NFL draft. And so some instant live reaction that you'll get to hear on the podcast. But without further ado, we shall jump right in. Monday night, Cole Caulfield makes his debut for the Montreal Canadiens versus the Calgary Flames, and they pick up a very crucial win in the race for fourth that we outlined just on Sunday. And Ottawa has beat Vancouver twice this week, which is huge for Montreal. But then Toronto comes into the Bell Center and has an excellent performance last night. A little bit more complaints from the Montreal side about the reffing, but it's been a busy week in the North Division. And I don't know, where do you really want to begin and jump in here?
Yeah, I guess we can start with the race for the fourth. It seems like a bit of a who can come in last place in the race to the bottom, because none of these teams really are making that strong playoff push that generates momentum and cinches the spot and is going to be a big story heading into the playoffs. As things stand, with these losses to the Ottawa Senators, the Canucks would now have to go a perfect 5 games in their 5 games in hand on the Canadiens just to break even with them, which they'll have to do over a pretty ridiculous strength of schedule. So the momentum was all there last week, beating the number 1 team in the Leafs, and then they lose it all to the number 7 team and the Senators, who I think for the first time all season have climbed back into 6th spot, at least until the Canucks play a few more games, which is really the story of the Canadian division. I'm super excited for when the playoffs, all the games have been played, to do a little statistical analysis on division parity and just see how it spaces out, because right now the Canadian division is looking like it's going to wrap up as potentially the tightest one and just one of the more bizarre ones, although that's the one we've been following most closely. On the Calgary Flames end, they have their next 3 games against the Edmonton Oilers and Winnipeg Jets, which, if you're a pessimist, is probably going to be enough to put them out of a playoff spot. If you're an optimist, the games after that are against the Canucks and the Senators. So if you can generate momentum against those top teams, then you have a chance to ride it out against the bottom teams. Though, as I just mentioned, that did not go very well for the Canucks, and the Flames have really struggled against the Senators this season. So considering those struggles and them having to go against the Oilers and the Jets, I think I said it a month ago, but can say the Flames are really out for now. So it does seem like the Habs spot to lose, and that seems unlikely, but we're at like the 90-95% of playoff certainty at this point, I think.
Yeah, we keep writing off Calgary, and then they keep inching their way back into the maybe conversation, and then we buried them again. So it just feels like that's what's going to happen. Maybe the Leafs will help them out and beat Montreal in the 3 games left they have together. But I wanted to talk about this upcoming stretch for the Flames, and you said they were going up against Edmonton and Winnipeg, and Winnipeg seems to be a team that people want to play right now. They've been scuffling. They've lost 5 in a row. Of course, the 2 last week to the Leafs, and then the Oilers just seem to own them this season. And McDavid has been just ridiculous. He scored at least 2 points in every game against them, and seems to just completely own the Jets. It's been really fun to watch him do all the things he's done this past week with some of the ridiculous highlight reel goals and scoring in a number of different ways. And this looks like the first round matchup between the 2 and 3 seeds. And if you're Winnipeg, you got to be super, super worried about this matchup, because it just, like we said, each team in the division has a poor matchup. For the Leafs, it seems to be either the Canucks or the Senators, who are the 2 worst teams in the division. But for Winnipeg, it's definitely Edmonton, and that's something they should be very concerned about heading towards the playoffs.
It's kind of crazy because I would have said a week ago that they've been the most consistent team in the Canadian division throughout this whole year. I think they'd only lost 2 in regulation once before this point. So yeah, you've got to be screaming if you're a Jets fan right now, because that would have been the team I probably would have picked to make it out of the Canadian division in the playoffs if you'd asked me a week and a half ago, just based on the consistency, the goaltending, and the top 6 and a good enough defensive corps. But man, you really never know when the collapse is coming. And yeah, McDavid, I guess, is another storyline that we probably haven't given the attention it deserves, because what a season.
Yeah. We seem to talk about him every week in the first half of the season, and then really trailed off, because it's almost boring to just continue to. What more can you say about him, right? He just continues to be incredible. But it has to come up now that he is on pace for a 100-point season in a 56 game regular season, which is mind boggling. It's absurd. And he's sitting at 84 points right now. He's only 7 goals behind Austin Matthews for the race for the Ross, or the Richard, pardon me. And he's going to run away with the Ross, but he's got 9 games left in the season to get 16 points, which is well within his point pace, especially if he plays Winnipeg a couple more times. And yeah, it'll be fun to really track down the stretch run here. If he can reach that milestone, be really, really impressive. And if he does that, then most likely you'll have the Oilers as that number 2 team in the North Division heading into the playoffs. But okay, if you have a thought about Edmonton, I'll let you go. I was going to move on.
Oh, I'll say, yeah, at this point, teams are playing for momentum, it seems like, more than anything else. The Jets and Oilers are going to play each other. And in this COVID age, one home versus away game probably doesn't make that much of a difference. Though I haven't really taken a look at how the home away matchups have varied this season compared to others in terms of points. And then I was going to segue saying, we haven't really talked about McDavid scoring 2 points in a night because it just seems automatic, much like Austin Matthews during that goal scoring run he had, where he was just making it like, why doesn't, of course, players score a goal every game? It's easy. You're on the ice for 20 minutes. You can find time to score a goal in there. And I wanted to talk about his latest one because, oh my God, I think that's going to be a contender in our 2021 highlights of the year. Knocking a puck out of the air, tapping it, and in half a second having it on his stick. Allen had absolutely no chance on the only goal I can even think of that's been filthier this year is the one McDavid put up breaking through 4 Leafs. Man, that was insane, eh?
Yeah. And he is already probably the greatest Leaf. Well, easily, he's the greatest Leaf we've ever seen. But he may be, when it's all said and done, the greatest Leaf of all time. And the leader right now of a team that has clinched a playoff spot in the North Division. So that's one worry that we have put to rest. This is a team now in a great position with no more games against Edmonton. So they don't have to face a really hot team and they can experiment with the lineup a little bit moving forward. And some of the things that I've loved seeing from them, of course, Matthews incredible, and he had another play in that game where there was kind of a chip in from the blue line, and the puck was around his shoulder level, and he like tapped it off his stick in midair and tried to swipe at it out of midair. Like he just tapped it to himself. He almost had another one. It was, yeah, he's really special, man, and really fun to watch. And that was just one piece that stood out in a fun night for the Leafs as they took care of business against Montreal last night.
Yeah, I thought I was watching Sandin a little. I thought he looked great. He had one goal scoring chance earlier where I just really loved the positioning, the placement on the shot. He forced Allen to make like a across the body ripping glove save. And then there was another, I liked him on the power play as well. I think our second power play, which I guess the statistics starting to look a little better relative to how it was before. But the only good moment on that second power play was generated by him where he pulled the defender off him and got Thornton an open look kind of in the high slot, which I quite liked. And I guess I have 2 questions for you relating to that. One, with the way, if he keeps up this level of play, when Bogosian's healthy, who do you run? And in that same vein, when Hyman comes in, who do you scratch? Spezza, Thornton, or Brooks, or someone else?
Yeah, those are two great questions. I think the first one's a little bit easier to solve based on what's happening right now, and you still have a little bit more runway to see. But I say if Bogosian comes back, Sandin's knocking Dermott out of the lineup because while Dermott, I love him, he is kind of like more of that like average guy. I think Sandin has a higher ceiling out of the two. And with Bogosian, you have to have him in the lineup for the playoffs. You just need to have a guy who's willing to be physical and be that big body around the front of the net. You can't run Sandin and Dermott together because they'll get pushed around. And so it feels like it'll be Sandin Bogosian is what they're hoping to have. And Sandin has shown no reason why it shouldn't be him. He's been really, really fantastic. But Dermott's a guy, right? He's a really great seventh defenseman to have so that if Sandin has some struggles in the playoffs as a very young defenseman who maybe hasn't taken his lumps, Dermott's a guy who has now been in a couple playoff series that you can throw in there and feel comfortable with. Again, we're talking about guys who will probably get 6 to 7 minutes a night when playoffs roll around. So I don't know how much of a difference either of them will make. It just depends on if Sandin, if he's able of running that second power play unit continually, then he's definitely getting playing time coming in the playoffs.
Yeah, that I guess before we get into the next point, that's something I've been really perplexed by this whole second half of the season is why it hasn't been Brody quarterbacking that position because up until Seen Sandine, it's mostly been Hall filling that slot, which I don't, other than just being a pure minutes thing, has never really made sense to me.
I think you just have so much skill on both of those power plays that uh, Brody, like he spends so much time being defensively responsible and like so many minutes, tough minutes, that I think just Hall, again, can't be sure unless you're in the locker room, but I think Hall just fits better with what they're trying to do on the power play. Of course, they have their analytics, right? And maybe Hall's shot is designed better for the orientation they have, or just the way that he gets zone entries or the way he moves the puck might just fit better. And now that they've found Sandine to really take that over, then again, that even gives Hall like a good 2 minutes of rest so that he's not running out there on the power play. And I feel like the biggest reason is Brody just logs so many heavy minutes against the top offensive talent of the other team that you don't want to send him out there for another minute, minute and a half running a power play unit because that's just going to run him into the ground.
Yeah. Then on to the forwards. I Of the three I mentioned, there's one I absolutely would not pull out. I feel like it's a race between two of them. I don't know if you think similarly.
Yeah, so Joe Thornton, first of all, has just turned it up a notch recently. And I don't know if he's going to be your guy, but I love what he's done lately. Another really productive night last night. Like, I don't know if you can break up this fourth line. They've just been buzzing the last couple of games. Thornton's been everywhere. Spets has been everywhere. Adam Brooks is flying all over the place. I've really loved what he's provided. And Pierre Engvall out of the lineup is great for me because I don't think he belonged there anymore. But with Zach coming back, I think you could either see even like someone like Galchenyuk because while we love what he's done, he hasn't put up points. And I don't know. People are saying it's gonna come, it's gonna come, it's gonna come, but at some point it's not. And I'd rather have Zach there than Galchenyuk if he can't put the puck in the net. And then I guess the other guy you'd look at is Wayne Simmons. You need for the playoffs. You need that toughness. So I guess it comes down to it. It would probably have to be Thornton because Brooks is your center, and Zach can't run out and be your fourth line center. So you'd see something like Hyman on the third line, and the fourth line would be Spezza, Simmons, Thornton, and just run out the 2012 All Stars.
Yeah, they've gone to that line a couple times throughout the season, but not with any consistency in back to back games. Yeah, you didn't mention Spezza, which is who I was also thinking, like, that's not really a question mark. He's been such a jackknife this season, just giving you all these different great little things, and the goal scoring's been a lot more consistent than Thornton. So I think Spezza's earned the playoff spot, and yeah, Thornton and Brooks both seem to be riding the same wave of momentum. So it's a tough question on who to pull there. And
Yeah, it's such a great problem to have, right? Because even if, I guess, if you're talking playoffs, then you could actually take out Brooks and put in Hyman because at that point you really only need like that fourth line's going to play what 5 minutes a night. Like they're not going to be out that much, and I'm sure Spezza and Thornton can operate at center enough to patchwork it together. So um, that's a decision for Sheldon Keefe, and I look forward to seeing what sort of combinations he comes up with over the last 7 games of the season. Their last game against Winnipeg, I expect no like top 6 guys should be playing in that game because the Jets are going to want to come out and just injure them. Um, and 3 more games against Montreal to really set the tone for the most likely playoff series. It's going to be really interesting. I think the Canadians are going to turn up the physicality. Obviously, they're missing quite a few guys, including Brendan Gallagher, who's done for the year. But I think when they get their
wait,
guys
what?
back, they're going to be more more difficult to handle. And Yeah, and obviously we'll see what Cole Caulfield can do for them, but they're missing some guys that when they come back, they're going to turn up the intensity, turn up the physicality.
I thought I was hearing them talk about Gallagher like skating with his cast off. I didn't realize he was out for the season.
Well, maybe he's healing faster than I thought.
I think there is some playoff hopes for him, but don't quote me. Yeah, it's interesting. And I took a quick look at the other divisions. The St. Louis Golden Knights, Colorado one is all clinched up. The Central Division all clinched up. It's just the Eastern one that's still a little open.
And what a race it is. You've got New York climbing. Adam Fox is a guy who's, I think, is he leading defenseman in the league in scoring? Just like a name where that's kind of come out of nowhere, but he's had an excellent season. And Lafreniere, who of course was the number one overall pick, hasn't had that big point season that maybe everyone was excited for, but it's been a solid depth guy for them. And of course, Artemi Panarin, whenever he's on the ice, he's going to make things happen. It's been a decent year for the Rangers, and they're chasing the Bruins for that last spot. But those top three teams seem pretty locked in.
Yeah, just I'd say it seems like that one's the closest to the Canadian in parity.
Yeah, and that is going to be an absolute gauntlet for whatever team comes out of that division. Which only strengthens the Leafs' chances, right? If they manage to get out of theirs. But we will see what happens in the North Division as we get closer to the end of the season. Looking forward to it. And I'll take this time to transition now into the under 18 World Hockey Championships that have just gotten underway this past week. The Canadians kicking off their first two games, the first of which was an absolute thumping of the Swedish team, 12-1. And then they only beat Finland, Latvia, 4-2. And it feels like there is no greater athlete on this planet than a Latvian goaltender when going up against the Canadian squads.
Drama.
Yeah. Fantastic performance from the Latvians. They always seem to play with a lot of heart, and Canada should thoroughly make their way through the entire field in this tournament, and really fun to watch Connor Bedard and Shane Wright, who are going to be the respective number one picks in their drafts a couple years down the road here, especially Connor Bedard, who I think is 16 and has just silky smooth hands. He looks to be like a really, really, really fun talent that is getting a little bit of buzz, similar to like a McDavid and a Crosby in terms of how young he is and how much success he's having. So more bright things ahead for the future of Canadian hockey, and we'll continue to watch them play this week at the championships. And we're back for some Combat Corner. Max is going to break down the upcoming UFC fight night this weekend. Really looking forward to that. Max, take it away.
Yeah, you are, because we got Dominic Reyes versus Yuri Procházka. And this fight, it really feels like there's a lot of unknowns in both fighters' trajectories right now. There's Yuri Procházka, a very hyped fighter who has had one fight in the UFC that doubled or tripled his stock value, knocking out Volkan Oezdemir in the second round. And Dominic Reyes, really hard to know what to make of him right now. Almost everyone thinks he won 3 rounds against John Jones in his title shot, and he was a pretty heavy favorite to take it against Jan Blachowicz, who just absolutely shut him down and knocked him out also in the second round. So we've got one fighter on the rise coming off a second round knockout win, and one fighter on a bit of a downswing coming off of a second round knockout loss. That's kind of where the parallels end between these two, other than their frames. But I'm really not entirely sure what to make of the potential and hype of where both fighters are. I never really saw it with Dominic Reyes leading up to his title shot against John Jones. I other than the win against OSP. I thought he did exactly what he was supposed to do against a middleweight in Chris Weidman, and I thought he lost the fight to Volkan Oezdemir. And then I was really impressed by the 3 rounds he put out against John Jones. But what won him those rounds were his volume and pace. And I think that's just something we've consistently seen in John Jones is when he fights guys who are like 6'5", closer to his height, then he struggles to keep them at distance and they're able to land more shots on him. And Jones just doesn't really have that one shot knockout power. And then when Reyes went up against a guy like Blachowicz, who does have that one shot knockout power, Reyes just wasn't able to get off the volume that won him those rounds. And he was really forced to fight at Blachowicz's distance, and Blachowicz was just the better range kickboxer. And that was the story of that fight. Procházka, a lot more unconventional and interesting to talk about in his performance against Oezdemir. Very, very unique, interesting style. He crouches super low, keeps his hands right down there, and does a lot of, I don't even know what you call it, but like these parallel steps where he's going like right foot in front, left foot in front, right foot in front. And he's like tapping his chest as he does it, which lets him move and angle off in different ways. And then really leaves the head defense up to his reflexes, which he did a pretty effective job at against Volkan Oezdemir, who's one of the best first round finisher knockout artists in the division. So if that sort of keep your hands down and get your head out of the way works against No Time, then it's probably going to work pretty well against a lot of people. What that style, the drawback of that style is it really leaves you defenseless against the leg kicks because you're crouched so low. It's going to be hard to move out of the way. You're putting a lot of weight on them, so they're going to hurt more. And Reyes does use the leg kicks. You saw him throw a lot against Blachowicz. So that's the things I'm going to be looking for are one, how does the power of Procházka, I mean, he is Eastern European, go more with the Jan Blachowicz Polish power? And is it going to keep Reyes similarly like cautious and afraid to push the pace and be constantly getting in there close? Because against Blachowicz, he couldn't. Every time he tried, he got tagged, and then he finally forced one when he was already hurt. And Blachowicz put him away pretty easily, and Procházka showed those kind of reflexes and that kind of power against Oezdemir. So stylistically, the finish is there for him. But if Reyes can fight a little smarter, use the leg kicks a lot, and kind of exploit the unorthodoxness in with like traditional orthodoxy, then you can see that being a pretty easy downfall by Procházka. But I love this fight. Just a very unconventional fighter against a much more conventional one. Two guys who, like Procházka, he counter strikes and pushes the pace at the same time almost because he's charging forward with his hands so low. He's like daring you to swing at him as he walks you forward. So in a way, he's counter striking because he's constantly dodging out of the way, but he's moving forward. So if you're not throwing at him, he's going to be throwing at you. And that's ultimately what won him the fight against Oezdemir. So it should be a really interesting main event. There's some other good fights on the card. The co-main Swanson versus Giga Chikazdy I like a lot. It should be an awesome mixed martial arts kickboxing bout. And there were a couple other ones that caught my eye that are failing me now because I wanted to talk about a couple other things in the UFC world that have been announced, I think, within this week. The big one being that the UFC middleweight title will be defended by Israel Adesanya next against Marvin Vettori, which I didn't, the episode we missed because of me moving caused me to miss out on the opportunity to tell you how amazing Robert Whittaker's performance against Kelvin Gastelum was. One of his best fights ever. And one of the cleanest wins he has for sure. He just put on an absolute clinic in shutting down Gastelum and looking really good as he did it. But The story here is the fight's going to happen. I can't remember if it's June, July. The reports are they offered it to Whitaker. He said no. And I need more time than that. And this is the second time that's happened where they've wanted to give Whitaker the title shot and the timeline has just been too short. So it's kind of, it's a tough position because the champ kind of gets to set his schedule and the UFC is going to want to make as many title fights as they can. They're going to wait on the champion, not the challenger, to be ready. And Adesanya says when he wants to fight. Vettori's game, Whitaker isn't. It's as simple as that. You just really hope that Whitaker is going to get the next title shot because there are no other contenders other than Whitaker at this point. The next one would be Darren Till, who Whitaker beat within a calendar year of now. So there's no question there. The tricky part, not that I think this is incredibly likely though, is if Vettori beats Whitaker, the UFC might want to give, or excuse me, if Vettori beats Adesanya, the UFC might want to give Adesanya the rematch because he's such a marketable star and champion. So Adesanya wins. Hopefully Whitaker gets his title shot before Christmas time. Adesanya loses. Hopefully Whitaker gets his title shot before Christmas time. But things a little more dicey on that end. So feel really bad for Whitaker. I understand why this is happening and it makes sense. It just sucks. And I really hope to see him fight for the title in his next fight because he's taken out 3 top 5 fighters in that time and looked really great while doing it. Then the last thing I wanted to talk about is today, Endeavor, the UFC parent company, went public with its IPO, dropping on the New York Stock Exchange. I think it rose a couple bucks, all kind of within projected estimations. So not a ton to discuss or gloat over there. And I'm not really the guy to do what microanalysis there is. But if you want to own a piece of the UFC, that is now something someone can do. The really interesting thing is we might get a better window into fighter pay and other such things because we get very little insight. The commissions require like base disclosure, but we never hear what pay-per-view points amount to, what bonuses amount to, what background bonuses amount to, any of that stuff. And what we do here is incredibly disappointing. So you can hide stuff from fans and media companies. You can't hide stuff from investors. They need to know everything and will demand knowing everything. So it's not the UFC that's gone public, to be clear. It's the company that owns the UFC. So the financial reports and status sheets will just be on Endeavor's profits and costs. But the UFC is by far the biggest business they own. So there's potential there to learn a lot more about the backroom finances of the UFC, the profitability, and why, whether or not it's true, what we roughly believe to be true, that they pay about 20% of the money they make to their fighters and athletes, which puts them 30% below every major sport in the world. So, going to be really interested to follow that and hear how that goes. Also, pay-per-view numbers are something that have been forever quite cloudy, and those will almost certainly be cleared up. So, a lot of interesting stuff there, and looking forward to having some of the cloudiness and murkiness dissipate, hopefully. All right, that wraps that up. We'll be right back. And we're back. I think just a bit of baseball for this one, looking at the notes. What do you got?
Yeah, so the Jays have had 2 games and 2 off days so far this week. Really uncommon for baseball, but that's usually what happens when you have interleague play, which is what they had against the Washington Nationals on Tuesday and Wednesday nights. The first game was the high, and the second game was the low, as the Jays got a historic night from Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who continues his just inferno start to the season. He's the youngest Blue Jay to have 3 home runs and 7 RBIs in a game. Just some monster shots, and 2 of the home runs off of a like surefire Hall of Famer Max Scherzer. So a really awesome night from Vladdy. He's really showing a sustainable approach to the plate that's leading to great results. And this kid just has natural power. The ball just launches off his bat. So it's been really fun to see him mash early in this season. Then we get to the bad, and everyone after that night from Vladdy very excited going into Wednesday. And George Springer announced he will be making his debut, and he looked rusty at the plate at least, which is where the only place he was because he's DH. He went 0 for 4 in his debut, but nice to finally have him in the lineup and just another threat that pushes everyone down the lineup. That led to a good night for Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who hit his first home run of the season. He's been scuffling, but he's a great hitter. And so having him in the 8 spot, hopefully will get him going a little bit because he'll see some better pitches to hit. But the bad, unfortunately, is for my boy Steven Matz, who I was raving about just 5 days ago. He was tied for the league lead in wins, and he ran into a tough outing. The Nationals all over him, knocked him up pretty good, and the Jays get blown out pretty handily. I think it was 9-2, the final score last night. So continuing to ride that kind of 500 season so far. I think they're a game under. But guys getting healthier and coming back. They just announced Nate Pearson was coming off of the injured list today, so he'll hopefully be back in the rotation soon. And he's a kid that if he can really stay healthy, he's got the stuff to be a number 1, number 2 starter on this team. So looking forward to seeing more guys coming back for the Jays later on this week. Let's move on to basketball, shall we? And I guess I'm going to try and combine some of the notes here. The Raptors had a nice win against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And in April, Malachi Flynn, up until the game against Brooklyn on Tuesday night, was 9th in the NBA in fourth quarter scoring in the month of April, which is bizarre. And it was a stat that I just laughed at and loved so much because he really has been stepping up for the Raptors recently, obviously against some weaker competition, but still nice to see his progression. But to no avail. Monday was a great night. The Wizards lost in overtime. DeMar throwing us a bone with a great performance in overtime. Him versus Bradley Beal was a fun match to watch. Beal dropped 45 to DeMar's 37, but the Spurs get that one. And we were so close to the Wizards, and then falling to the Brooklyn Nets and getting cooked by a random guy from Europe named Mike James, who the Nets, I guess, got from CSK Moscow over the last week. And he came over and then he looked like James Harden in the fourth quarter, was just cooking our guys in the pick and roll, had a step back jumper over Kem Birch. And then, of course, the Raps had done such a great job holding Kyrie and Kevin Durant to very low shot attempts. And then the fourth quarter, those two guys also got their offense going. So a tough loss. And the Wizards come back and beat the Lakers last night. Anthony Davis is back, his 3rd game back. He's looking a little bit better. He got posterized by Rui Hachimura, which was shocking to see. But yeah, the Wizards seem like they're starting to tighten their hold on this 10 seed. And it's no thanks to just an amazing couple of months now from Russell Westbrook, who really fluctuates to overrated to extremely underrated. And you just got to settle on the fact that this guy's going to put up big numbers and make things look easy, but sometimes he's not going to have the best decision making and maybe not the guy you want taking the last shot of the game. And that's why he's had such great guys beside him, like Kevin Durant, like Paul George, like Bradley Beal. And he makes those guys better. He makes their job easier. And then they're the guys who you want closing games for you. And so this Wizards team, I wouldn't want to play them in the play-in tournament. They look pretty solid and they're on a hot streak right now.
I do feel like I hear that about almost every team. Wouldn't want to play them during the play-in tournament. Well, you've got to play someone.
And that's the thing I'm loving about this play-in tournament. And the thing that really is drawing fans in is if you make a run and catch that 10 seed, hey, we're hot going into the playoffs, right? Any team, that's how you're going to draw it up. So Yeah, but I don't know, just overall, the Wizards over the last couple months have shown results like they're top 10, I think, in offensive and defensive efficiency. And they were a team earlier on the season who could not stop like anything. They're just getting blown by all the time. So their defense has really stepped up. And a big part of that is Daniel Gafford, who they got thrown in a trade with the Chicago Bulls. And he's been excellent rim protector and rim runner for them, and has been a pretty important piece to helping them improve their defensive side of the ball.
So I think we can say the Wizards won that trade with the Rockets, eh? Westbrook
Yeah.
to the wall.
Oh my God. Yeah. And Westbrook, like that was a huge L for the Rockets, but they managed to somehow salvage it because they got him for Chris Paul, who I'm going to talk about next. Oh my gosh, incredible. Yeah, definitely lost that one, but they came back and they won this one. Uh, or oh no, they lost both of them, didn't they? Wow,
Yeah.
poor Houston Rockets, man. I mixed that up. They lost back-to-back trades, giving up way too many assets to get Russell Westbrook, and then giving up or trading away Westbrook then for John Wall. But it suits them better. They're in line to get the number one pick as of right now. They're locked into that one seed currently, and as long as that pick stays in the top 5, they don't convey it to Oklahoma City. So I guess it's kind of working out for Houston right now. They have a pretty good shot at losing James Harden, but you're getting Cade Cunningham or Evan Mobley. So can't complain too much.
Chris Paul's
CP3. Yeah. Let's talk about this guy. Unbelievable season he's having. And again, I've talked about the Phoenix Suns a lot lately, but you can't say enough about this guy. And scores the last 7 points on Monday in an overtime win, in a close fourth quarter finish against the New York Knicks, who have been one of the hottest teams in the league. He hits this crazy last second throw up a prayer mid-range jumper over Julius Randle, then hits a dagger three, turns around and is like, what's wrong with these guys? He's just talking all that trash, backing it up, alpha dogging everyone in the league right now. He's definitely should be on the MVP ballot. 100% should be all NBA guy, and is getting a ton of respect now. And just like so fun to watch the Suns team. They beat the Clippers last night in a duel for the 2 seed and are now within 1 game of the Utah Jazz for that number 1 seed in the conference. They clinched playoff spot last night as well. Lots of great things happening for the Suns. First time in 11 years, they're finally back in the playoffs, and really happy for Suns fans. It's a team that went through the dark days of tanking. Like you talk about the Sixers process, you talk about some of the other teams that have struggled mightily, and the Suns are definitely a team that was perennially in the bottom 5 for many years and missed on a ton of draft picks. And they're finally seeing some regular season success and hopefully some playoff success. And listen, the way that they're playing right now, I would not be surprised if they were in that Western Conference Finals. They've been really special. I'll talk about the play-in tournament, what it's shaping up to be in the Western Conference. One more point after this, but Portland managing to stem the flow of hemorrhaging for now. They get a big blowout win of the Memphis Grizzlies last night, and they were in free fall. Like they've been losing a ton of games. Again, cannot play any defense right now. And Lillard, who had been carrying them through the first 3 quarters of the season, has been hampered by a hamstring injury. And so his efficiency in scoring has fallen off a little bit, and they just haven't been getting enough from other guys. And yeah, they needed that win last night against Memphis, but like Memphis, Dallas, Portland, San Antonio, Golden State, all those teams are within like 3 games of each other. And so still unsure of what that 6 through 10 is going to look like. But in any case, lots of really great stars that we'll get to see in that play-in tournament, and really looking forward. Like the West especially is just going to, like, there is no bad team out of all of those 10 in the West. Like they are completely solid 1 through 10, and this playoffs is going to be really fun. I'm looking forward to it. The last thing I want to talk about in terms of basketball, and Max, I wonder if you have any input on this. There were reports coming out that the Philadelphia 76ers are interested in a sign and trade for Kyle Lowry in the upcoming offseason. Of course, Kyle Lowry will be a free agent, unrestricted. I think he was looking for a ballpark of 2 years at 25 per when we were hearing rumors at the trade deadline. I don't know if the Sixers will be able to fit that into their cap, which is why you might see a sign in trade. Um, if you're the Raptors, if you can get something for Lowry when he probably was going to go sign somewhere for nothing, you do that in a heartbeat. I think the other alternative is you just bring him back again because of how much he means to your organization. But really interesting. And I'd be also really interested to hear what the 76ers are thinking about giving up. Now, obviously, would be nowhere near what people were talking about near the trade deadline. But if we could even get one of Thibault or Maxey in a sign and trade for Kyle Lowry, that's a home run deal for Masai. And so we'll see if that's on the table. And Kyle is someone who would definitely add so much to that 76ers team. Just another playmaker, another guy who can take over, another alpha dog who plays on both sides of the ball that you could pair and have that mental toughness. Feels like a more polished playmaking version of what Jimmy Butler was for the 76ers 2 years ago.
Yeah, no bad options for the Raptors now that Malachi seems to be shaping up towards what we're hoping at a trajectory where you don't feel too bad having him as the number 2 guard behind Van Fleet to start next season. Obviously, if you can keep Lowry, then you've had this amazing Hall of Fame player on your team for his entire run, which is nothing to turn your nose up at. And look at us. We just finished talking about what Chris Paul is doing for the Phoenix Suns at his age. So there's plenty to like there. I'll be really curious to see how the 76ers do come playoff time, and if there's any holes in the team, and if there's any Lowry shaped holes in the team. I mean, obviously he's going to make any team he plays on better, but I think how the playoffs go for them, where and what they struggle with will probably shape what you're discussing in terms of a price. And I don't know if Lowry's like, the rumors say he's like definitively decided to leave the Raptors. It's just Philadelphia he's looking at, or like how am I trying to say this? Either he's like set on like the Raptors or the 76ers, or he's ready to leave the Raptors, and it doesn't matter if it's the 76ers or not. There's lots of teams he's interested in.
Yeah, I would say he's only interested in contender.
Yeah.
And I imagine he's interested in Philadelphia because that's his home. And the other team would probably be Miami, just because that, of course, who doesn't want to play in Miami? It's awesome to play there, but also fits the kind of culture of who
You
Kyle
just
is as a
pointed that
player.
out.
Yeah, fits who Kyle is as a player, and so it feels like it would be those three teams. You could see the Lakers make a run at him, but like that's a team I don't know how they be able to afford to fit him in, but that'd be also a good fit for him. So I'd see like those four, and no bad options if you're Kyle, and if you're the Raptors, hopefully you get something for him if he decides to leave. All right, that does it for basketball. We'll take one last break, and we got a little bit of football fan cave coming up for you.
And we're back for Football Fan Cave, where we're going to kick off for soccer so Owen can make every minute count and hope to squeeze as much time to get as much out of the NFL draft, which is, I believe, just kicking off as it is currently 8:02 p.m. So take it away, but not that fast out the gates.
Yes, sir. We'll see what we do. We're going to start off with Champions League action earlier this week. The semifinals and the first leg had some great football, of course. Two matches of just absolute pure top of the line world class football. And the first matchup, Real Madrid and Chelsea, did not disappoint. The American stud up and comer Christian Pulisic scores early with Chelsea all over Real. Really like a solid performance from them. But Karim Benzema with a just superb strike, one of the oldest players on Real to ever score in the Champions League. And that was a really important goal for Real. And even though Chelsea ends with the 1-1 draw where they have the away goal advantage, Real's got to feel really happy about that result based on how flat they came out. They're in tough now going back to England to try and pick up the win, but in a really good position based off some of the chances they were giving up early in that game. On the other side, Paris Saint-Germain and Manchester City, PSG at home came out with a ton of energy, almost ran City out of the building in that first half. Marquinhos scores a huge clutch goal in that first half. But then Manchester City, they could have succumbed to the voodoo that has historically plagued them in Champions League semifinals, and they could have let it get to them. Got absolutely run out in the first half, and they come back with just an absolutely like tough, gritty second half, and they play outstanding. They get 2 away goals and draw a red card on one of the PSG players, and just like a fantastic result for them in the second half. They get the 2-1 win on the road. They get to come back home in the driver's seat. And if you're PSG, really disappointing after such a great first half of football, and you really got to get Kylian Mbappe the ball a lot more. He only had 30 touches, which is nowhere near enough. He needs to get way more than that if they're going to be successful. And yeah, I thought they seemed like the team that was going to go all the way for me. I had them pegged. They just were playing, it seemed like, at another level. But if you can't get your top superstars the ball, then you're going to not be successful. It's as simple as that. And so really looking, it's going to be an awesome couple of matches next week to finish up the semifinals.
So you're saying you're really enjoying watching the top teams play each other and would like to see more of that?
Absolutely.
Huh. Why hasn't anyone ever thought of that?
I think it means more when you don't see it as often. You bring up a great point, right? It's the pure selling point of the Super League. But I think the part of what makes Champions League so special is that it is a treat that you get to see these top teams go off only like once or twice a year. Whereas if you see them going week to week, then you acclimatize to that level, and then it becomes less exciting. So I hear you, but I'm gonna brush it aside and keep going. Let's move on to the Dollarama Champions League, aka the CONCACAF Champions League, where Toronto FC really poor result against Cruz Azul earlier in the week. They lose 3-1 at home, which is basically like nails in the coffin. I sincerely doubt they will score 3 away goals and not give up any. So they're in tough next week in Mexico, but we'll see what happens. Crazier things have happened, and we'll be rooting them on. But the guy I wanted to talk about for TFC is they have made an international signing this week for Jefferson Soteldo, the Venezuelan, previously playing in Brazil, and he is 23 years of age. And what will stand out to most casual TFC fans is his height. He is 5'2", and he's a family man, really responsible for his age at 23. And despite his diminutive stature, fans have to remember the greatest player who has ever played for Toronto FC was similar in stature, Sebastian Giovinco. So we got to give this guy a shot, because from all that I've heard, he is liked around the world, not just in North and South America. There has been some interest from European clubs. And so this is a huge piece of business for Ali Curtis and TFC to get this guy. And he is insanely quick. He moves laterally in between the boxes really well. He's great off the ball, like makes great late runs, can really be a supporting piece. And the biggest thing I think that TFC loves about this guy is he is one of the most proficient crossers in his game. I think he was averaging 43% completion on crosses into the box, which is ridiculously high for something as low percentage as a cross. And when you've got a big, bulky guy like Josie Altidore, who will hopefully be back one day this season for TFC, you want to have a guy who can get him the ball in the box because he's a big target and he's got great finishing touch. And so Sotelo, really exciting to see what he can bring. And I think he's going to love being part of Toronto FC, and it's going to be a great home for him. So looking forward to see what he can do when he gets into his first match this season. All right. I didn't do the best job of stalling, but we have arrived to the NFL portion of the Football Fan Cave. Before we get to any live draft reactions, if there have been any picks at this point, I want to talk about my Denver Broncos, who make a move earlier yesterday. They acquired Teddy Bridgewater for a 6th-round pick from the Carolina Panthers. Great depth move. You don't give up much, and Teddy's really, really solid. Just a bit of insurance. I don't think that takes them out of the quarterback market at 9th overall, and I hope it doesn't take them out of the quarterback market, because if one of these top 5 guys could fall to us, I'd be really interested in taking them. But Teddy's a good backup to have, and good insurance for Drew Lock, who has been up and down and maybe can be a solid backup, or a guy who even competes for the starting role, because this Denver Broncos team is solid. They just need to stay a little bit healthier, and they just need a little bit better production at the quarterback position to be successful. On the other side, Carolina gets a 6th-round pick. It feels like now they might definitely be in on this quarterback market now, sitting with Sam Darnold. I think you could probably have him compete with one of these guys that they draft. And so looking for Carolina to maybe take a quarterback in the next half hour or so. But yeah, solid, small move for the Broncos. And I love Teddy, man. I just wish him the best. He's just seems like the greatest guy on and off the field. So good to see. The other news that has been taking the NFL by storm today is the quotes from and the murmurs that Aaron Rodgers is disgruntled and wants out of Green Bay and will not be going back to the team this upcoming season. This is huge, has huge ramifications for the balance of power in the league. It seems like statements coming out that his top 3 teams are the Broncos, the Raiders, and the 49ers. If he were to be moved, the Packers will not move him to the 49ers because they are in his conference. So Raiders and Broncos could be on the table there. If we get Rodgers, I would be over the moon, because he is amazing and would be better than most of the guys you've probably seen this draft, unless like Trevor Lawrence, because he's so young, is just infinitely more valuable in a league where the quarterback position is valued so much more than any other position. But if you could get Aaron Rodgers, you got to swing that deal. And so it'd be interesting to see. I don't think he gets moved tonight, but it could be something that happens. And it's been building for a while now, after they made it to that NFC Championship game 2 years ago. And then the Packers proceed to draft a quarterback in the 1st round in last year's draft. I think that left him with a sour taste in his mouth, and he's looking for a new scene, a new situation to have a last couple of runs at a Super Bowl. And so it will be interesting to see where he ends up. Yeah. Craziness.
It is crazy. I guess it also just speaks to the value and confidence a quarterback has in the NFL, because like it's almost, you maybe correct me here, but it's almost a certainty the team he moves to will be a worse team than the Packers, like just in terms of skill at every position and depth. So if you're in, like, I'm trying to imagine that in like hockey or basketball, and like a star on his like last legs who wants to win a cup more than anything, like going to a worse team to do that just is so hard to wrap my head around in that perspective. But I imagine disagreement with management just like untenable.
It really must be. And I think the Jordan Love pick was a big part of that. He's been asking for some help, and there were quite a few still solid receivers remaining on the board at that time, and to take Jordan Love, I think was a big gut punch for him, and he's probably got 3 to 4 good years left. I mean, based on Brady, who knows how long these guys can go anymore? But I think Rodgers is 38, and so you would say like 1, 2 more seasons, but really, who knows? He's probably got the Jeopardy gig lined up in a couple years if he wants it. So maybe won't run as long as Brady, but um, if he's going somewhere, he's going somewhere with a complete team because the Packers already have one. And so yeah, you're like you saying, it must really be bad if he wants out because that team is back to back NFC title game losers and definitely had their sights set on another one. So yeah, that's kind of it. Now we'll see how it develops, but um, we're seeing here that Trevor Lawrence, of course, the unanimous #1 overall pick now for 2 seasons ever since he won that national title with Clemson. He's been at the top of everyone's board forever and is going to be an absolute stud. Really looking forward to see what he can do in Jacksonville. That can't really put it off much longer, but that's probably all we're gonna get to. The NFL draft moves really slowly, man. So I don't know if we're gonna get anything else up here before we finish up. So enjoy the draft tonight if you're watching, and I guess you'll hear it tomorrow, but I hope you enjoyed the draft. I hope you enjoyed the Leafs game. Lots of basketball on tonight as well. Thank you so much for listening to us once again. Yeah, it's been a good day for me being done school and getting to hang out with you here tonight. And now I'm looking forward to taking in some more sports after this. So Max, I'll leave it to you to do the honors.
Yeah, been fun hanging out with you too, buddy. Willie just scored his 16th goal of the season a couple of minutes ago. Go Leafs go. Sports Next Door signing out.